Now here's your host, Jason Voorhees. And Aaron Savage.
Oh, yeah!
Hello, everybody, and happy Thanksgiving from all of us here at Sports and Metal. We are your co-host. This is Aaron Savage, joining you live from my work truck. Next to me is my partner in crime, best buddy as always, Mr. Jason Voorhees. What's going on, brother?
What's up, man? Happy Thanksgiving.
Not much. You too. We wanted to wish everybody out there a happy Thanksgiving. And in lieu of our show this week, we're going to bring to you live, right here, right now, a best of compilation episode of Sports and Metal. So happy Thanksgiving, and we hope you enjoy it, guys. Rock on.
Peace out.
We finally all three agree on something.
That's good. That's a positive.
Because I most definitely feel that the DH should be, around. And I also, like both of you, used to hate it. So I think we all three agree, and for the same reasons, for the selfish reasons that I want to see every player be able to, come up to the plate and, be used in that role, as opposed to having to, make roles for players or move them out of position or, have platoons. Although I will say my favorite platoon was the 93 Phillies that probably used the platoon players better than any team that I've ever remembered.
Multiple going on that team.
Well, I guess we'll go to a little diversion since you brought it up, Jay. You guys are Phillies fans. I'm Mets fans. And the funniest thing is probably my two favorite single-season teams are obviously the 86 Mets and, believe it or not, the 93 Phillies.
And what did they have in common?
Oh, Lenny Dykstra.
Wasn't he a guest on some podcast recently?
What's that? Yeah.
Wasn't he a guest on a podcast recently?
Yeah, right here on
God.
Sports and Metal, folks. Check it out. No, but sincerely, you brought up platoons, Jay. Look at the not only the 93 Phillies, but the 86 Mets. You had in center field the Mookie Wilson, Lenny Dykstra platoon. At third base, you had Ray Knight, but you also had Hojo plugging in. Hojo was plugging in at shortstop. Yeah, I mean, Hojo on the 86 Mets. Hojo was a role player on the 86 Mets. He played all over the place.
He was young, right?
Yeah, but they got him from the Tigers. But the point is, it was all platoons outside of like Gary Carter behind the plate. Keith Hernandez at first, Darryl Strawberry in right. Every other position was platooned. And the 93 Phillies were very similar. You had Eisenreich and Incaviglia getting plugged out in that outfield. The only guy who played every day, I think, in that outfield was Dykstra on the 93 team.
He was.
You had Kruk at first. Collins
Eisenreich. You had Milt Thompson, Pete Incaviglia. You had Mariano Duncan and Mariano Duncan and Mickey Morandini at second base.
Yeah.
You had so many platoons on that team.
Yeah, and then back to the 86.
Ricky Jordan would come in, and spell John Kruk.
Yeah, Ricky Jordan.
Yeah.
That's right.
And that's just like 86 Mets. You had even at second base, you had Wally Backman and Tim Tuffle. And how many teams?
Philly for one short year.
Yes, he was. And think about it. How many teams, like, for example, you take Backman and Tuffle platooning at second, and they're both, like, all-time beloved, famous Mets. And the Phillies, similar thing. Like, how often do you have guys that were platooning that are beloved? Usually it's not like that. They were so important to those teams, but.
No, but that's why they were so lovable.
Yeah,
that's why everybody loved them.
And the other thing they both had in common, those two teams, is that they were rough and tumble, decadent. We're gonna kick your ass.
Yeah.
And
they never went home. They stayed in the locker room and drank till they passed out.
Beer swilling, partying, card playing,
sleep on the trainer's table, and roll off the trainer's table onto the field to play the game the next day.
Yep. The only difference was the 86 Mets, I think, were a little younger and brash in that sense, and the Phillies was like the same guys a few years later where they all grew mullets and had beer bellies.
The 93 Phillies, honestly, I mean, they were kind of lucky, to be honest with you. The Mets had some guys that were young and talented on that team, in platoon roles.
In the 86 team, yeah.
86 team, yeah, sorry. But the 93 Phillies, they were filled with a bunch of guys that Pete Incaviglia was a nobody. He had like 23 home runs for the Phillies that year. Milt Thompson, he was an okay player with the Cardinals before we got him, or the Reds, wherever he played. It wasn't anything. Dave Hollins hit 20-some home runs. Who the hell is Dave Hollins? You know what I mean?
And even Darren Dalton was like a 205 hitter for years with the Phillies. Until he
right there. I think that's whatever.
What I was saying is Jake DeGrom is the guy, he's a Cy Young. He's the ace of all aces. I mean, to me, he's the best pitcher in baseball. So I'll give you that. But I think the Phillies have two guys in Wheeler and Nola that if they can both pitch the way they're capable of pitching, it gives you two top of the line guys, where I think, in my opinion, Zach Wheeler is the Phillies ace. And, I think that this year he's going to vie for competition to your Jake DeGrom for Cy Young. That's my opinion. I'm sticking with it because I think Zach Wheeler, I loved what I saw last year. And like I said, it was a short season. But I think Zach Wheeler, if he's healthy, I think he wins 20 games this year in this Phillies team.
All right, so now I'm going to come in. I honestly think it's going to be between the Mets and the Braves. No disrespect. That being said, I think that the Phillies have enough firepower and talent that they could surprise. I'm not going to disagree with you. I happen to agree with you that the Phillies have the potential to have an awesome threesome at the top of that rotation. I agree.
I think Zach Eflin is the ace in the hole. If Zach Eflin wins 15 games, Phillies win. They do. The Phillies will win.
Well, I think that goes without saying if you can get that deep. But now let me come back on you. Dude, I just think the Mets lineup from top to bottom is like insane. I mean, it's like insane. Jeff McNeil is a guy that's like a throwback, dude. This is a guy that if you give him 550, 600 at bats this year, he's going to strike out 50, 60 times in an era where guys on regular strike out 150 times. This guy doesn't strike out. He puts the ball in play. He can hit 330. He can steal 15, 20 bags. He can play all over the diamond at a very high level. He's not a liability anywhere you put him. And he's got pop. He just hit like 20-something home runs 2 years ago. So, I mean, he's a potential MVP candidate, dude. I mean, 2 years ago, he was in the MVP conversation. Him and Alonso both 2 years ago. And Alonso, first base, the guy is just going to hit 50 home runs. It's like, unless he gets hurt, he's going to hit 45, 50 home runs. He's just got that kind of power. I mean, the guy can hit 240, and that's what he's going to do. And then that leads us to the wild card, the guy who's the better defensive first baseman, because Pete Alonso isn't athletic enough to play the outfield, and there's no DH, so Dom's playing the outfield. In the metal community, March 19th, obviously it's the anniversary of the great Randy Rhoads' passing in that plane crash, May 19th, 1982. So we'd be remiss to not mention that to jump off the show as the metal diehards that we are. Rest in peace to the late, great Randy Rhoads. They were on a tour stop in, I believe, Leesville, Florida. The tour bus driver had a pilot's license or maybe used to have a pilot's license. I don't remember, but decided to start taking band members up on joyrides. And Ozzy was passed out sleeping on the tour bus. And the pilot, first took, I think Jeff Nichols, the keyboard player, and maybe one of the roadies up. And he was trying to fly really close to the tour bus, like to buzz it, to try to wake up the guys that were sleeping on the tour bus. Rudy Sarzo was sleeping on the tour bus. Some close calls. And when he landed, Randy Rhoads, who was afraid of flying, was talked into going up because he wanted to take pictures to send to his mom. And they assured him they were going to play it super safe. Rest is history. The pilot started buzzing the tour bus again. A wing clipped the tour bus, broke off. The plane ended up crashing into a pine tree and then into a shed. Exploded in a ball of flames. Everybody on the plane died. Ozzy was woken by this. just a tragic, tragic loss. And, today, March 19th, every year we remember the late, great Randy Rhoads and everything he meant to the metal world and to Ozzy Osbourne's career. So wanted to start there.
Yeah, I mean,
anything you want to add about that, Jay?
Yeah, he was just Randy Rhoads. Where do I even start? I mean, God, he's definitely one of my all-time favorites. I'll never forget the first time I heard, Randy Rhoads, obviously on the Blizzard of Oz record, and I was just absolutely blown away. I know you and I always, debate, as far as like the Sabbath eras, and you've always liked the Ozzy, Sabbath era, and I've always been a Dio guy. But when it comes to like Ozzy Osbourne, like his solo career, that's kind of like when I personally got into Ozzy. So that's kind of why I was never really a big Ozzy guy with Sabbath. That being said, that record, when I heard that, I was just, like I said, I had heard, obviously, everybody's heard Eddie Van Halen. I had heard a lot of the greats, but when I heard that record for the first time, I was just like, there's something different about this guitar style. Like, it was just, I don't know how to explain it, but it's just definitely, and to lose him at such a young age, it's like, I can't imagine, what would have Ozzy's career looked like if Randy, hadn't? It's unfathomable would die at that age, let alone, somebody that.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports and Metal Podcast. We are your co-hosts. This is Aaron Savage. With me, as always, my partner in crime, Mr. Jason Voorhees. What's going on, brother?
Yeah, man. What's up, bro?
Big day that affects both of us, man. Wow. So
huge
with the Dolphins, and then obviously how it affects the Eagles. The Eagles got involved. Bro, where do we begin? I heard the Dolphins they traded the third overall pick that they had in this year's draft to San Francisco. In return, they got the number 12 pick in the first round this year, a 2021 third-round pick. So this year they got that as well. And they got a first-round pick in 2022 and 2023. That was in the Dolphins deal with San Francisco, which came as a surprise because it almost makes you think, are the Niners not committed to Garoppolo? But that's a whole other conversation. Right after that, the Dolphins dealt again with the Eagles, and they sent that 12th round, that number 12 pick that they got from San Francisco in this year's draft to the Eagles, and in return they moved back up to number 6 in this year's draft. Whoa, bro! How did the Dolphins get this much with the number 3 pick this year? It's highway robbery, bro. It's crazy what they're doing down in Miami right now.
Well, I got to be honest with you. The trade actually for the Dolphins part doesn't surprise me.
Oh, they've been wheeling and dealing, man. I'm a Dolphin fan. I'm so pumped.
Yeah,
I can't begin.
Let's get into this and let's face it. The Dolphins, obviously, when you have a pick in the top 5, it's a coveted pick, and for the most part, there's a lot of quarterback-hungry teams in this draft this year, especially. And there's about 4 or 5 quarterbacks that could go in the top 10. There's at least 4. So to me, this was a no-brainer for the Dolphins. The only reason I would see the Dolphins sticking at the 3rd pick is if they were taking one of those quarterbacks. The fact that they had let me finish. Let me hear me out. So, in my opinion, this signals that they are definitely in on Tua, because if they had the 3rd pick, they would not have traded out of it. They would have stayed at the 3rd pick. So my point is that them knowing that there's other teams that wanted to trade up, they knew that this pick was very valuable. Now, obviously, I'm not discounting what they did because obviously they got the most out of it. I mean, the 49ers gave them, that's a huge package that they got.
Dude, now, number 12 pick, a third robbery.
Well, no, trust me, I agree.
Off about it. And it'll lead me to a next point. I think it's still ridiculous that we continued this extra inning rule where the runner starts on second base. Now, I'm not a Yankee fan. You know I can't stand the Yankees. So I'm glad they lost. But I'll be the first to admit that it was completely ridiculous that they lost in the 10th inning when the guy's on base to start the inning and the first batter hits a double. It's already a 3-2 game. It's a 2-2 game after 9 innings. And within fucking 3 minutes, it's 3-2. And 5 minutes later, the game's over. There were 4 extra inning games on opening day yesterday, Jay. And all 4 ended in the 10th inning. Is that a coincidence? Absolutely not. It's because the runner's starting on second base. It's bullshit. That's not baseball. Dude, what happened to games that go 16 innings? Epic games. It's part of the lure and the history of baseball. How many ways are you going to change the game? I was okay like this year. We'll do the 7-inning doubleheaders again. I don't even love that, dude. And even that, I think it's honestly because I'm selfish. I want to see some complete games. So even that, I think my reason for wanting it is bullshit. Just get back to real baseball. Stop all the fucking gimmicks. I'm sick of it. Where do you stand on this, dude? Like, why?
Dude, I can't stand it. Like, I can't stand anything about Major League Baseball today. I really can't. I mean, the pitching situation pisses me off. The fact that there's no complete games. The fact that the league had, some of these teams are carrying like 10 relievers and 2 bench players. It's a joke. Like, everything about the Major League Baseball is a joke right now. And I'm not kidding.
Second baseman. What
Aaron,
is this? Ballet?
I'm telling you. You know what? It's even filtering now to the NFL because with that, not to get off the subject. I know, but I'm saying not to get off the subject. But now they're having the 17th game, which now you're going to have guys. You already had, we've talked about that with like the yardage, the passing yards. How in Dan Marino's era, he was like the first guy to like literally like throw for that much yards. And then he did it a couple of years after that. And now it's like every player that comes up as a quarterback almost, you at least throws for 3,500 yards. So now you're adding an extra game. Well, exactly. And now you're adding an extra game. All these leagues are doing, they're ruining the sanctity.
Mets opener because their season was delayed due to the COVID outbreak with the Nationals. So it was the Mets opener, Monday night, Mets Phillies at Citizens Bank Park, DeGrom on the bump. Jay, we were texting a little bit that night. It was the night you were on the Chips and Dish podcast. And I even saw you guys on that show basically acknowledge that the Phillies were losing. And you said, is DeGrom on the mound? And you guys were like, it's over. Because it should have been over. If the Mets have a 2-0 lead with Jacob DeGrom through 6, having thrown 77 pitches, there's no excuse that the Mets would lose that baseball game. Zero, zilch, none at all. And I'm sick and tired of fans of all teams always blaming the bullpen. It's not the bullpen's fault.
It's the manager.
It's the manager's fault for putting the bullpen in. These guys are in the bullpen for a reason because they're not good enough to start, with few exceptions like your elite closers. And even those guys are there because they have ridiculously great stuff for an inning, but they're not built to pitch deep into a game. You can't throw like Aroldis Chapman for 8 innings. It wouldn't work. You got to blow his arm out in half a season. The bottom line is there's a reason guys are in the bullpen and they're not in the rotation because they're not as good. But let's take it a step further. Let's say you had a bullpen of 7 Mariano Riveras, right? Let's just make this example. You have a bullpen of 7 clones of Mariano Rivera, arguably the greatest relief pitcher that ever played, right? That's all you have in your bullpen. And you have Jacob DeGrom on the mound with his track record, tossing up zeros, unhittable through 6.
You take him out after 6 innings like the Mets did Monday night with only 77 pitches. That's what he had when they took him out. 77. That used to be your first spring training start. God, but we'll get it. Jacob deGrom out after 6 innings. Now, again, you have 7 Mariano Rivera's in your bullpen. Even if you did, you don't know when you make a pitching change that every guy's going to have it that night. Just like Jacob DeGrom.
Without further ado, I want to welcome our very, very special guest to the show. We are super pumped to have him, especially me being in New Jersey. He's the frontman of a legendary New Jersey band, TT Quick, and he's currently the frontman of a legendary German heavy metal band, Accept. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Mark Tornillo.
Hey,
What's going on, Mark? How are you?
good. How you doing, guys?
What's up?
I'm hanging in there.
Awesome. We're glad to have you, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Upset that there's no baseball today, but you know.
Rainy day in New Jersey, New York. Yep.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
How are you
So-
guys doing?
I'm doing good. How about you, Jay?
Doing all right. I see you got your Mets gear on there.
Oh,
You're all
come
right
on,
here.
man.
Yeah, Jay's a Phillies fan, Mark. Oh,
Yeah, well, so's my son-in-law.
oh, okay. So you're used to it then.
Phillies Eagles, we know.
Yep. So anyway, before we get into the metal, I'm going to take a little left turn since you came in all decked out. Dude, how'd you become a Mets fan? You growing up in New Jersey just since you were young?
Been a Mets fan since '62.
Awesome.
I mean, I'm giving away my age here, but my grandfather, my mother's parents lived next door, and my grandfather was a Brooklyn Dodgers fan. They moved
Okay.
to LA, or they moved to the West Coast, and it was as soon as the Mets fired up. My brother was a hardcore Yankees fan. My grandfather wasn't having it, so once the Mets started up at the Polo Grounds, that was it. That's what we were watching.
Mediocre and get away with it. But for this purpose of this mock, I threw Michael Parsons, which left our birds to take Devonta Smith at 12, who of course is still my wide receiver 1. Obviously, there's not much of a gap between him and Chase. It's there for me. For me, I just think Devonta Smith is more polished. I'm not at all bothered by his weight, and there's no other flaw in his game. He simply is without a flaw at 166 pounds.
He's basically a wide receiver 1. He kind of reminds me of a Deshaun Jackson, but better.
Well, the only thing that keeps me away from thinking Deshaun Jackson, and I think everything else is right. And Deshaun Jackson was definitely like a similar guy in where people thought he was a little too light, but he was 5'10". Devonta Smith is 6'1". The guy I compared him to is Marvin Harrison, who played very light. I think he played at 175 pounds. And obviously was one of the best wide receivers in history.
We struck gold then.
These wide receivers is if they can use their bodies to get inside and be pressed like Devonta Smith can do, like he can move his body around. Now, and I'm willing to bet that if he gets to too heavy of a weight, like if he gets to 180, he may not be able to his the ball. Devonta Smith
Or even if they did draft Fields, it wouldn't preclude them from getting, a Garoppolo. Now, obviously, they just re-signed Cam Newton, too. Now, I don't see them having 3 quarterbacks, but they could always trade Newton or something.
That's where I was going with this. I almost wonder if they would trade Newton, bring Garoppolo in as a veteran presence, and have Justin Fields hold the clipboard for a year.
They very well can do that because I think that Garoppolo probably knows even though he hasn't been there in a couple of years, he still knows their system better than Cam Newton. Because don't forget, Cam Newton last year, remember with the COVID stuff, he missed like the 3 games.
And I just think Garoppolo is more of a Belichick type player to me.
I agree.
He fits the mold.
He definitely
Anyway,
fits.
Trevor Lawrence was just drafted with the #1 pick. We all knew that was coming. Jay, we're going to wrap this show up tonight. We hope everybody enjoys the draft. It started. We'll see what happens. We'll see if any of these predictions come true. You know, clock's ticking away to see if the Niners do make that trade for Aaron Rodgers, as Jay boldly predicts. We'll find out shortly. And we'll see what's going on with that. Like I said, everybody enjoy the draft. And tune in tomorrow night to Sports and Metal. We'll be right back here at 8 o'clock. Phil Sandoval from Armored Saint. It's going to be an amazing show, Jay. I know you're pumped, dude.
I'm excited.
I am too, man. So, listen, we're excited for the draft tonight. We're going to get our focus and our attention onto that. We're going to enjoy it. And fins up, baby. Let's go, Dolphins.
Fly, Eagles, fly.
All right, Jay.
Oh, I guess you saw my Megadeth shirt.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I got a story about Megadeth.
I was going to ask you. I was actually just going to ask you that, but now that you brought it up, why don't you tell us the story with the Dave Mustaine story?
Okay, here's what happened. You know, by the way, I have to say, me and Dave are great. You know, he's a great guy. He's incredible. He invented a genre. You know, he basically invented a genre, and to be able to play at that level and to sing, much respect to Dave Mustaine. But here's what happened. Okay, we were all very young. You know, we were partying. We're listening to Motorhead in a basement at some party in the valley, Betsy Bitch's house, and there was this was before the mosh pit, so we were just like running around, just dogpiling each other like in football. You know, you know what I mean? Just like running around crazy, and I think I accidentally pushed Lars and he fell. You know, but it looked like I did that on purpose, but I didn't really want to do that. It's just,
Yeah.
Dave Mustaine saw this and he
Sorry, we had some technical difficulties. We'll be right back.